Well, that's certainly a tip of the iceberg, as cases of tanker explosions have becoming recurrent, particularly in Lagos, and that's usually on the Otola bridge, causing untold hardship to motorists aside from the loss of lives and destruction of valuable property.
And Kingsley, according to available statistics, Nigeria has lost nothing less than 100 lives to gas and tanker explosions in 10 months. That's from January to October 2020 alone.
Now, transport experts say that fuel tanker explosion constitutes a veritable threat to road safety as well as human security in the country in view of its destructive impact and implications.
The senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, Malan Garba Shehu, in one of his reactions to the fuel tanker explosion, described the incident as a national scandal, pointing out that the many accidents occurring on our highways are preventable if proper proactive and precautionary measures are put in place or properly observed routine policies.
So, why do we continue to have incessant fuel tanker explosions on our roads in the country? What are the factors responsible for these explosions? Could lack of enforcement of safety standards be partly responsible for the increase in the number of incidents? Are the culprits held liable for the resultant damages and loss of lives arising from the accidents? And what should be done to curb the cases of the fuel tanker explosions on our highways? That's our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today, as we'll discuss incessant fuel tanker explosions on our roads. I'm Kingsley Osadolo, and I thank you for joining us this morning.
And I am Juma Yusuf, joining my colleague Kingsley to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. We have our complimentary segments, including newspaper review. But first, let's take the highlights of the news with Joseph Johnson. Good morning, Joseph.
Morning, Juma, and thanks for joining us. Nigeria has promised to sustain efforts at charting Africa's renewal and rebirth towards deepening healthy democracy, good governance and sustainable growth. President Muhammadu Buhari stated this at the virtual signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Committee of Heads of State and Governments participating in the African Peer Review Mechanism and the Federal Republic of Nigeria on the second peer review process.
Our administration has continued to vigorously pursue security, economic diversification, and anti-corruption as the main thrust of national change agenda. The totality of this strategy is premised on the promotion of democracy, respect for the rule of law and human rights, gender equality, and by far the largest investment in social change in Nigeria's post-independence history.
Imo State government is soliciting federal government's support of its renewed efforts at controlling and containing the second wave of coronavirus pandemic, impacting negatively on the lives and livelihoods of the people. Governor Hope Uzodinma made the request when he met President Muhammadu Buhari.
The number of people testing positive and dying now is on the increase. And the state government alone cannot, as a matter of honesty, summon the capacity and the resources to address this menace. We need equipment, we need oxygen, we need well-equipped isolation centers, we need to test more. And Mr. President has promised that he will intervene.
Nigeria continues to record more COVID-19 cases with 1,617 new infections in the 18 states of the country. And in a new figure released by NCDC, Lagos still maintains the lead with 776, followed by Kaduna with 147 new cases, then Kwara State with 131 and the FCT 102. Plateau has 78, Edo 59, Ogun 53, Oshun 45, Rivers 37 and Taraba 36. Other states with new infections are Nasarawa 34, Adamawa 33, Kano 26, Delta 20, Ebonyi 16, while Bayelsa and Gombe State have 11 each, and finally Borno State with 2 new cases. With this development, Nigeria now has more than 112,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19, with 89,939 discharged, while 1,449 have now died of the virus. More than 3,000 urban poor to benefit from federal government's COVID-19 intervention fund of 5,000 naira per beneficiary for 6 months. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo will today flag off the pilot scheme with beneficiaries drawn from 4 political wards, 2 each from Lagos and the Federal Capital Territory.
That this program is being sustained, and don't forget that there's budgetary allocation for that for the 2020 as well as for the 2021. So it's a program that will continue, hopefully beyond even this administration.
The homegrown school feeding program of the federal government that was disrupted last year as a result of the COVID-19 and later modified to take home rations is set to commence as schools resume. The Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development has organized the 4th annual review of the program with focal persons across the country in Abuja.
Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development remains committed to providing the necessary support and the enabling environment for social protection and inclusion policies.
I urge you all focal persons and program managers, as well as all other stakeholders here present, to continue to support the ministry in the most coordinated way.
The federal government's drive of ensuring every child has unhindered access to education and the engagement of youth in productive ventures in the northeast has been described by Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno State as a recipe to ending insurgency. Professor Zulum made the assessment at separate meetings with the Minister of Education, Adamu, and the Executive Chairman, Federal Character Commission, Dr. Mohiba Dankaka in Abuja.
The entire Northeast sub-region, in terms of the total percentage of workforce that we have in the federal system, is lean, and therefore we are soliciting for your support with a view to ensuring that our sons and daughters are being recruited into the federal system.
I would like to assure Your Excellency that Borno State will get its fair share, just as your interface with other stakeholders.
And that concludes the morning news highlights. Good morning.
You're welcome back. Development expert calls for maximum utilization of benefits of digital economy and agricultural sectors to address unemployment. Let's join Kunle Adeye for details on business news.
Most sectors of the economy have been affected by COVID-19 pandemic, which has resulted to low income for economies of many nations and job losses, especially in the private sector. A development expert, Remy Hassan, says digital economy and agriculture are 2 sectors with endless benefits.
If we get the digital economy optimized, it will benefit the operations of every other sector that we delve into. Agric is the way to go. So bring the success in digital economy and marry it with whatever success we're going to achieve in agric, then we'll be where we should be.
He emphasizes that job seekers should target agriculture and digital economy as possible solution. In another development, a capital market expert, Professor Uche Uwaleke, says investment opportunities in the country will strengthen Nigeria's equities market.
If you look at the investment opportunities today, the equities market is one market where the return can be above inflation inflation rate. If you look at what happened in 2020, for example, where the market returned over 50%. So with the inflation rate at 15%, the real rate of return is quite positive.
Professor Waleke believes government policies and programs are stabilizing the market. With Business News, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Many thanks, Kunle Adeyeye, for the business package. Next for us now is newspaper review. We of course are going to have to take three newspapers, The Punch and The Nation, and the editorial from the Daily Trust newspaper.
Yes.
Newspaper review, of course, Bayo Ateb is already in the house. Bayo, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning.
Good morning, Bayo.
All right. Jumai, we'll begin with you.
Yeah, we'll begin with the Punch newspaper this morning. Just above the masthead, we have first cargo of Nigeria's new crude Anyala set for Europe. That's quite some good news there. We find details on page 20. PDP woos Okorocha as ex-governor lampoons APC plans party. We find details on page 14. NDLEA seizes 21.9 kilograms of cocaine at Abuja airport, begins probe. You find details on page 11. Telcos submit 43 million NINs to NIMSI for verification. That's on page 20. And just below the masthead, you see NUT meets Thursday over COVID-19 rules. Partial compliance recorded. With riders, pupils without face masks sent home in Abuja, Enugu, Plateau. Ondo, Ogun schools ignore protocols. Reps panels disagree on resumption. And additional 10 million vaccines doses likely in March. That's attributed to the federal government. And you can see the picture there of students returning to school Oshogbo, Enugu, Maiduguri, and Akure. Under the picture story, IBM competition winner killed by robbers struggling to snatch phone. That's on page 5. 35 bandits, soldier killed in Zamfara operation. You find details on page 7. Can 6 unity, mourns Catholic priest, brother still missing. You find details on page 9. At the bottom plate of the Punch newspaper, Kaduna bandits kidnap professor, kill son, 3 others. Details on page 11. Nasarawa repatriates 40 Almajiri to states of origin. That's on page 9. And religious fanatics twisting Kuka's statement to divert attention. Attribution to Professor Wole Soyinka. You find details on page 7. Kinsley.
All right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. From above the name flag says, who is who on Nigeria's ambassadorial list? Who is who on Nigeria's ambassadors list? That's on page 2 in greater detail. With the rider, Emenike makes history. That's the ambassador who's been posted to Washington, D.C. Anxiety lingers in Kwara APC after meeting. And Niger governor to mediate. Soyinka, that's one of the headlines there. Kuka's position on state of nation in order. NAF loses officer as troops neutralized 30 bandits in Zamfara. And below the name flag says 3.2 million naira recovered from 7 kidnapped suspects in Niger. And victims regain freedom. The 2 photographs show pupils and students at 2 different schools in Ikeja and Abuja observing the COVID-19 protocols as they resumed in school yesterday. FCT schools comply with protocols. That's on page 38. And the late story, it's still on COVID-19. It says 20% of COVID-19 tests returns positive, says PTF. So 1 in 5 of COVID tests in Nigeria these days is positive. SGF says Nigerians must respect protocols to avoid second lockdown. Other headlines: WHO worried over vaccine distribution. Government releases 10 billion naira for local vaccine production. NCDC to begin testing 450 per local government. The sick and aged to stay away from churches. You have details inside the paper. Ondo orders headers to quit forest. And Kano Industries get CBN's 10 billion naira revival appeal. EFCC arraigns Mama Boko Haram on another 41.7 million naira. There should be alleged fraud. Details on page 8. Bio.
Thank you, Kinsley. Let's start with the resumption of schools that took place across some states yesterday. The Nigerian Union of Teachers says they will be holding a meeting to monitor the resumptions. However, the Punch reports that in some schools, they noticed that COVID-19 protocols were observed, while others, they were very relaxed about it. The states among which schools resumed yesterday include Enugu, Ekiti, Lagos, Ogun, and Ebonyi. Osun State also reported resumptions yesterday. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control has been authorized to immediately implement 450 tests per local government of the 774 local governments in Nigeria. This will amount to about 348,000 tests nationwide. As at Sunday, Nigeria had tested 1,172,234 persons. And among these, we have 110,387 that are tested positive, which is about 9.4%. The active cases were then 22,156, which is 20.3%, and deaths, we had 1,435, which is 1.3%. But the PTF is expressing concern that unless Nigerians continue to adhere strictly to non-pharmaceutical protocols, there will be no alternative than to go into a second shutdown. So, and we are saying that we are now at the 5th highest in cumulative deaths when it comes to the continent of Africa. The PTF warns that there may be a second lockdown, except there's broad cooperation across the nation for this. As of this morning, the report indicated that yesterday we had 1,617 new cases in 17 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Now listen to how they distribute. Lagos alone has 776, Kaduna 147, Kwara 131, FCT 102, Plateau 78. And that tells you the picture of the escalation of the cases across the country. Total 102,004. The active cases so far, 20,616 of our compatriots are in various healthcare centers for COVID-19. So far, we have lost 1,449. The National Primary Healthcare Development Agency says it has enough facilities to store the expected 1,000 COVID-19 vaccines expected towards the end of this month. The Executive Secretary, Faisal Shuaibu, says that we will have ultra-cold facility equipment required to preserve the vaccines whenever they are available. He explained, however, that these are available at the National Strategic Cold Stores. Dr. Shuaibu also used the occasion to dismiss speculations on COVID-19 vaccines. He said that it is not true that the vaccines contain microchips. Neither is it true that COVID-19 vaccines will alter the human genetic information. He says that the growing hesitancy about COVID-19 vaccine has been attributed to false information, particularly generated on the social media. I received one of such yesterday, and I was marveled that what you are getting is not a conventional vaccine whereby you have a weak virus put into you so to enable your body immunity to fight it. Rather, they are putting a chip into you, which is a little bit contradictory.
Yes.
And they're also raising alarm that when they give you the injection, it will alter your genetic component.
Yes.
And they are equating that with genetic modification. And the Director General of the National Primary Healthcare Agency is saying that it is not true. He says that the only cure for now that is known is to get either prevent yourself from contacting or get a vaccine that will protect you from the virus. Meanwhile, the Director General of the World Health Organization has lamented that poor nations will not get vaccines in the short term. He says that unfortunately the richer nations are bypassing the poor nations and prioritizing their own vaccine access. He described it as a moral failure. In the area of concern about drug abuse, that the story that Kingsley read earlier on, Brigadier General Buba Marwa, who has just been appointed the chairman of the Nigerian NDLEA, says over 15 million persons in Nigeria across ages are currently indulging in various drug abuse. He said this upon assuming office yesterday as the chairman of the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency. He says that he was going to implement the Presidential Advisory Committee recommendation for the elimination of drugs abuse. Meanwhile, the price of crime sometimes catches up very quickly, and this time is an assistant commissioner of police. And Ekiti State High Court has sentenced an assistant commissioner of police to life imprisonment for knowingly buying a stolen vehicle from kidnappers. The court sitting at Ado Ekiti sentenced 7 others to 5 years term without an option of fine for kidnapping. The court held that the police tracked down the vehicle and found it in the compound of the assistant commissioner of police. Upon interrogation, he confessed that he bought the car from a mechanic who actually had gotten it from kidnappers. Well, on the international scene, President-in-waiting Joe Biden has named 3 Nigerians into responsible positions when he is sworn in tomorrow. We have Adewale Adeyomo, who is to be in a treasury position. There is Osaremi Okolo, who is also to be a COVID-19 advisor, and Funmi Olorunnipabadejo, who is going to be a White House counselor. The U.S. is on high alert following fears that extremists will stage demonstrations. Therefore, 25,000 National Guard have been called to come on duty. Meanwhile, the outgoing President Donald Trump has requested for a military parade, a color guard, and 21-gun salute as he departs Washington tomorrow. Pentagon is also foot-dragging whether or not he's entitled to such ceremony. Meanwhile, one of the actions that President-elect Joe Biden is expected to take is to sign executive order, and the executive order is expected to nullify some actions of the outgoing president. They include the nullification of the immigration bill, removal of travel ban from some Muslim countries, the rejoining the climate change coalition, as well as stopping the boundary construction at the Mexico-U.S. border. So, we are in the dawn of a new era for the United States.
Yes, that's the new normal, actually.
Very smooth and peaceful.
Yes, we hope they have a peaceful transition devoid of violence and protest at the Capitol.
Well, President Donald Trump has just about 28 hours left in office.
Yes.
28 hours, because he must vacate by noon tomorrow, but he probably will leave much earlier.
And he is expected to sign
more than 100 pardons.
100 pardons. And there are speculations that he could even include some members of his family and himself.
And himself. Once he's pardoned, even impeached. Well,
we'll see.
We'll see how it rolls out.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's now go to the editorial. We're talking about the launch of e-ticketing at railway stations. Lots of confusion there. And let me just read a little. The introduction of the e-ticketing option on the Abuja-Kaduna railway services has elicited mixed reactions from the commuters and the general public. Last week, there were reports in the media of confusion at the Abuja-Kaduna stations following the launch of the e-ticketing option on the Abuja-Kaduna railway, which was designed to curb identified incidences of sharp practices at the 2 stations. But still, they had a fake website that people went, bought ticket, came to the station. It's not valid. Well, quite some confusion.
There's confusion about the e-ticketing. There was this information again on the social media, and there were even pictures of the e-ticket. And eventually, Nigeria Railway Corporation came with a pronouncement to say that that thing was not true, it was fake. But the essence of the e-ticketing will go a long way in undermining the sharp practices that is going on. I had cause to travel to Kaduna sometime last month. In fact, it was in November. And it was on a Friday. You need to see the kind of passenger that were at the railway station. They were overwhelmed, and the sharp practices were quite obvious. There are 6 counters for selling tickets, but you have 2 persons manning them instead of having 6 persons. So you sell to some people here, move here and sell to the others. So there was confusion at the ticketing point. At the end of the day, a lot of people missed the trains they wanted to board. Another thing that has been observed is that sometimes some of the ticketers or those who are managing it will tell you that there's a group ticket. They will put people in one compartment, and apparently nobody is sure where the monies they paid for ticket went for, because they are not giving the physical ticket. They are giving the paper that said it's for a group ticketing. So those are the instances that the Nigeria Railway Corporation must check, because other than that, it will undermine all the initiative to recover the funds expended on the railway. After all, it is on a loan, and Nigeria has to pay back.
Well,
what is...
What do you say? Because I don't know what's wrong
with
with this country. Every time something comes up, all these hackers come in, pounds on people, use them, collect their money, and at the end of the day, they don't get what they want. What is it with this country that we cannot get things done straight and honestly? Why?
Sorry, majority of Nigerians are kind, honest, and straightforward people. But there are a few among us, unfortunately, who take their fundamental human rights and extend it to fundamental militancy, fundamental insurgency, and fundamental criminality. And unless we are able to address and arrest that, we will continue, majority of us will continue to suffer from the vagaries of these few insignificant ones.
At times you're even afraid to use technology to buy anything online.
Well, I don't know. Bayo, this e-ticketing or ticket racketeering at railway stations would just remind you of what used to happen 40 years ago with Nigeria Airways tickets. 40 years ago, yeah, that's a lot of ticket racketeering. If you recall, people had to be fighting, at the airports to get tickets, and after you bought your ticket, you also had to be fighting to get your boarding pass. It's something of an embarrassment that what we are discussing now on national television is how to purchase a ticket, go to the railway station, board the train, and go to your destination. These are seamless processes. I mean, in some countries, yes, before the advent of ICT, you just went to the train station, you bought your ticket, and you boarded. And now you did. I don't know. If it is a question of demand and supply, then provide more coaches. And there is nothing that says that coaches cannot go empty. Because the cost is actually on the locomotive. What pulls it? The other part of the train, to an extent, except of course you need more hands to work on them if you need to make any maintenance or you need to shunt. Get more coaches. If you are saying that people book in groups to get into a particular cabin or otherwise, the more coaches there are. You know the way it is. If you get to certain train stations and it is your choice which of the cabins you want, well, of course, which of the coaches you want to get into. The train is just going until it stops, the door opens, and then you board. So what is all this? You have, I don't know. That's,
thank you, Bayo. Thank you, Bayo. Yeah, it's quite sad, exactly. We're running out of time. Thank you so much, Bayo, for coming.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure, as always. Well, we'll take a break now. When we return, our conversation will begin. Thanks for joining us, and to begin our discussion on the subject matter, let's take this background report by Kunle Ade.
With Nigeria's population and level of its economic activities, one should expect a vibrant transport sector. Undoubtedly, our roads are under intense use by vehicles who move goods across the country. Petrol tankers are a set of vehicles that are actively involved in the transportation of petroleum products. One unfortunate thing synonymous with these tankers is their involvement in crashes, which in most cases lead to explosion. Lagos, the commercial hub of the nation, has witnessed a succession of fuel tanker explosions which resulted in loss of lives and valuable property. One particular spot in the city, Otola Bridge, is notable for this occurrence. Besides this, there was another explosion at Toyota bus stop on 7th of January 2021. This has extended to other parts of the country. In September 2020, for instance, the tanker explosion in Lokoja, Kogi State destroyed property and claimed many lives, including pupils and students of institutions of learning. A multiple accident which involved a diesel-laden tanker will remain indelible in the memory of residents of Erin-Jesha. In Osun State, when the spilled content resulted in explosion and caused a lot of tragedy. Similarly, in November 2020, an electricity transformer and shops were raised in a fire explosion when a diesel-laden tanker also crashed near a petrol station in Agulu, a Neocha local government area of Anambra State. The statistics is endless. Many questions therefore need answers. What is the immediate cause of these explosions? Is it a result of recklessness on the part of tanker drivers? Is there any reckless driver that has been penalized to serve as deterrent to others? Should their movement be restricted to a particular period? Guests are waiting on Good Morning Nigeria to provide answers.
And to begin our discussion, we want to first introduce ACM Jonas Agu, Zonal Commanding Officer, FRSC Zone 7, Abuja. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you and compliments.
It's a pleasure to have you join us. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
All right, then we have from our Lagos Network Center 2 guests who are joining us this morning. First, Alhaji Jibril Ibrahim, who is President, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. Alhaji Jibril Ibrahim, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Then also there with him in our Lagos Network Center is Ibrahim Farinloye. He's acting coordinator of the Lagos Territorial Office of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. Mr. Farinloye, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Viewers, good morning, compliment of the season.
All right, we're expecting to be joined by Zoom by the National Chairman of the Petroleum Tanker Drivers Association of Nigeria. He will be joining us via Zoom from Oyo State. But in the meantime, let's kick off the conversation with Assistant Corps Marshal Jonas Agu, who is right here with us in the studios. ACM Jonas Agu, you listen to the background report, and of course, we do get to have media reports on virtually a weekly basis of accidents involving fuel tankers. Is an explosion, whether in Anambra, whether mostly in Lagos, just any part of the country. So, what is it that the FRSC has put together in terms of accounts relating to incidents involving fuel tankers? In other words, how worrisome is this problem?
Well, let me say that as a nation, we all worried, and FRSC as the agency charged with that mandate, working with other partners, is of course worried. Worried because if you put into context all that has happened the last couple of years, between 2016 to 2019, we recorded about 1,333 crashes that were related to tankers. Last year, the first half of last year, we recorded over 200 crashes that were related to tankers. And if you break down these crashes, I want to first put a tripod. The tripod is the absence of an intermodal transport system that is fully developed. So what you get is the pressure being piled on the road. That is number one. If we had it developed, the pressure on the road will be reduced. Because then you can talk about the rail, you can talk about pipelines, you can talk about other modes of transportation. So that's number one point I want to make. Number two, let's look at, if you ask any of those in the business, the first concern is, the state of our roads. Yes, the state of our roads needs, to be, upgraded to meet safety standards, yes. But then they will not bring the state of the vehicles that are used for these businesses. Most of these vehicles are aged vehicles, over 30 years old, vehicles that if you look at in terms of their safety standards, you probably give them a 0 and say these vehicles should not be on our road. You also want to talk about the issue of maintenance. Of course, the issue of maintenance has become more like a national anthem in Nigeria. Everything you talk about, we say maintenance culture. Maintenance is the problem. But then you want to ask the question, if you're in a sector, you know that it's not just about your profit, but also issue of life. Should you be talking about maintenance being an issue? Number 3, you're talking about driver competence, poor fleet management attitude. These are some of the issues. Now, when I come to the issue of the state of the vehicles, you mentioned and said, look, listen to the report and you're talking about spillages. Why do they happen? It's not just because the roads are bad, because drivers' attitude is poor, because the vehicles are aged vehicles, but the fact that the necessary safety standards that should be in those vehicles are not there. The API standard manhole that should prevent spillage in the event of a crash is one of the issues that we are currently, in collaboration with other agencies, enforcing. We're talking about safety valves also. If these safety standards were complied, even with the state of the road and the kind of vehicles you have, we probably would be able to reduce the crashes or the extent of fatalities. But because we do not give priority to this, talking about the operators, you have these challenges that we have. Of course, the issue of not complying with the axle load as provided by law is a challenge on its own. These are some of the issues we are dealing with. Now, you can break down further driver attitude and talk about the issue of overspeeding by drivers, reckless driving, drivers feeling that, look, because it's an articulated vehicle, so I am the king of the road. You know, I can swerve and move you off the road without caring about your own safety. You can talk about lack of rest by drivers, issue of fatigue. You have cases where it's a fatigue-related crash. You can go on and break down these issues as some of the problems that are responsible for these crashes that we record on a daily basis in our country.
Assistant Corps Marshal, you know, the points that you have articulated certainly capture the magnitude of the problem that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
But I would like you to back up a bit. And let's have the data again, because part of what I captured was that in the first half of last year, even when we had the lockdown with the coronavirus, although there were essential services that were allowed to be undertaken, according to your account, that's the official account by FRSC, we had 200 tanker explosions or tanker
related crashes.
Related crashes.
Yeah.
That's right, related crashes throughout the country, and then from 2016 to that. Let's get an indication of the numbers and where the most occurrences took place.
Well, if you break it down, from the analysis you even gave, Lagos is one of our trouble areas. The latter part of last year, you had incidences in Lokoja. You had incidences in some part of the southeast. But of course, the Lagos-Ibadan axis has been one major sore point where we record these crashes quite often. Because if you look at the weight of the number of vehicles that move into Lagos and out, it is higher from that point. The port in Lagos, of course, service most of these operators. And so it's not surprising to see that the trend, slants towards the Lagos axis without isolating other parts of the country where these also happen.
Well, and Kingsley just asked for, the statistics and can you give us the number of deaths so far from this accident?
I don't have the number of deaths. What I have for now is total crashes, and I did say that for the span of 4 years, 2016, 17, 18, and 19, 1,333 tanker-related crashes. And for the first half of 2020, we had 241 tanker-related crashes.
Wow. Okay. ACM Jonas Agu, we're going to have to pause you in the meantime and bring you into the conversation shortly. Let's now introduce our guest who is joining us via Zoom from Oyo State. We earlier hinted that he will be joining us. Is Salmon Akoni Oladiti. Oladiti is National Chairman, Petroleum Tanker Drivers Association of Nigeria. Pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
morning, Nigeria.
All right. Well, let's. It looks like there's something that you have to set out with the audio. But let's take you now that your Zoom connection is stable. I'm sure you heard the Assistant Corps Marshal Jonas Agu here indicating that over a 4-year period, that's to say 2016 to 2019, both years inclusive, there were at least 1,333 fuel tanker related incidents on our roads. In the first half of last year, that's January to June 2020, at least 200 fuel tanker related incidents also on our highways. And we keep reading the reports, we keep seeing the horrific scenes that are captured in visuals all around the country. What is happening to your members and to other road users?
Well, good morning, Nigeria, once more. The tanker crashes in Nigeria, we have various
we seem
all
to
right,
be having
all right,
a problem.
come. We're going to have to allow Mr.
You know, when the
All right, let's go over now to our Lagos Network Center, where we earlier introduced the president of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, Alhaji Jibril Ibrahim. Alhaji Jibril Ibrahim, the same question I'm going to have to pose to you. You're listening to the statistics read out by ACM Jonas Agu, and indeed what we get to read and watch and see virtually on a weekly basis. Certainly, the nation is in a crisis of sorts, with fuel tanker accidents and related crashes on our highways. What are your thoughts?
Thank you very much. And you are very correct if you say that the nation is in crisis as a result of the tanker accidents that we're having on our roads in Nigeria today. And let me add a little bit on the statistics on top of what the Assistant Corps Marshal has given us. The same Federal Road Safety Corps have reeled out figures in the past showing that over a period of a decade between 2007 and 2017, we were experiencing an average of 300 road crashes involving these tankers on an annual basis. So you can imagine the gory picture. They have also reeled out a figure which showed that in the first quarter of 2018 alone, we have had about 116 road crashes involving these petroleum product tankers. Now, this certainly is taking a toll on our economy. Of course, to mention the losses in human beings, human loss, and the losses, of course, material losses we're experiencing, including social and environmental degradation. Now, this is catastrophe, as I would call it, we're having in Nigeria. Now, there are many reasons that the Assistant Corps Marshal has given for us having that situation. Definitely, they are there. And we're losing not only lives, which is a very serious situation, and materials. You can imagine other colossal damages. Now, on the vehicles themselves, we are losing the vehicles and the load that they carry. And that will have an impact on the economy also. Now, in the same first quarter of 2018, I mentioned that we had a figure of 116 such crashes in Nigeria. And Federal Road Safety Corps calculated the loss on just the vehicle and the product to amount to over 7 billion naira in just one quarter of 2018. That is the first quarter. Now, you can imagine the gory situation that we have in our hands. I will not hesitate to recommend that we even declare a state of emergency when it comes to this issue, because this is a serious problem that is impacting on our national economy. Now, having said that, we look at these causes carefully. The Assistant Corps Marshal has mentioned the issue, which I consider paramount, is the issue of the construction. Now, how are these tankers constructed? I have mentioned it in this forum before. Are standards followed? The Standards Organization of Nigeria has defined and stated standards for the construction of these tankers. Are they being followed? Now, we find a situation where from most of the vehicles you are seeing, the tankers you are seeing, definitely these standards are not followed. And as the Assistant Corps Marshal mentioned, there are safety measures that are built into the tankers so that these spills will not occur even in the event of the tankers toppling in an accident. But we don't get to see that. We don't get to see, in fact, some pictures have been shown, some video clips, to show motorboys trying to block these petroleum products that are seeping out of tankers while the tankers are in motion. And this situation continues to happen. You can imagine the standard problem that was associated with the issue of the Otola bridge accident. This was a vehicle that was imported from the United States, and it was supposed to drive or carry a 15-ton rig head for drilling. But unfortunately, it was converted into carrying a 30-ton tanker that would carry petroleum products. So you can imagine how that the capacity of that engine would not be able to draw 30 tons. And that was what happened on the Otola bridge, and we ended up having the tanker drawing back. Now, going back to the damages, of course, we are experiencing losses in terms of farmlands, people's houses, other vehicles that are involved in these accidents. Now, what are we doing about them? What are we doing in order to mitigate these issues? But of course, the issues are also bordering on human error. What are the drivers up to? Do they have the correct training? Do they have the correct certifications? And who is checking them? There is also the need for us to look at the safe to load scheme that was earlier introduced by Federal Road Safety Corps. Thank God, I think DPR has done a good job, because up to now we are not having fire incidents, well, not so many fire incidences in our tank farms. But of course, how do these trucks go into these tank farms if they are not roadworthy and they are being loaded with these products? And of course, they ferry these products right across the country. You know definitely that this is disaster awaiting to happen when you see some of these vehicles that are being used to haul these petroleum products. Now, it is unfortunate that we keep complaining about issues of compliance. What are we doing about enforcement? Who is enforcing what? And there are, of course, measures that we should take in order to mitigate these issues. And I think stakeholders should come together and look at these issues collectively and come up with a blueprint on how to address them. Thank you very much.
Jibril Ibrahim, you know, you've reeled out some statistics there, and you know, there are so many organs responsible for safety of this kind of vehicles on the road here in Nigeria. Are you saying that these organs are not doing what they are supposed to do, and they are not up to task in making sure that our roads are safe from tanker crashes?
Speaking, apart from the little effort I saw the Road Safety Corps put in place between 2015 and 2017, that we started having a downward trend of these challenges, I don't think much is being done. And this is frankly speaking. if we were doing what we were supposed to do, we will not be experiencing this number of crashes, we will not be experiencing this catastrophe. And all the statistics we have reeled out and the losses I have mentioned in terms of the tanker and the load does not include human loss, does not include expenses or incurred in treating injured people, does not include the cost of losses in farmlands, losses in houses, other vehicles, and things like that. Now, the regulatory agencies and enforcement agencies are there. But the question to ask is, who is doing what? Why are we having these issues? Who is checking what? Are we checking? If we're checking, we will not have this problem. For example, I've mentioned the issue of loading these products in the tank farms. Who is supposed to check that these vehicles are roadworthy and they have met the standards before they are loaded with the products? There should be agencies to enforce that right at the tank farms and wherever they are being loaded. And of course, if you want us to go into making recommendations straight away, I would mention that even for the construction of the tankers, we should have a database of these construction facilities in the country. And they should be monitored and regulated for that matter. Otherwise, what we are having right now is a situation where you see people by the roadside, mechanics, just constructing any kind of tank and then we're putting them on the road. Who is certifying them? Of course, there are also issues of when and where should we be checking for the compliance. And of course, it's unfortunate, the only places that we have and are being used as refresher points are the points that the drivers themselves have created for themselves, and it is totally unregulated. We are supposed to have like the truck transit camps or truck transit parks where vehicles go in and they are inspected. Well, first and foremost, the drivers will rest because the Assistant Corps Marshal has mentioned the issue of fatigue. This is a point where the drivers can rest and their vehicles are inspected to make sure that they are in compliance with the standards before they are allowed to leave such transit parks. But we don't have such things in place. Now, of course, there is also the issue of training. It is unfortunate that you just see drivers having driver's license and then you say they are good to go. There are other trainings, including attitudinal training, that these our drivers should go through. But unfortunately, we are not having that. I have mentioned here in the past, and people get angry with me when I say it, but I'm only putting it bluntly. Maybe I can put it milder today and stop saying that quacks are managing quacks. I will stop saying that from now on, and I will say that we should have better trained people with better capacity, at least to manage well-trained drivers in the industry.
All right. Alhaji Jibril Ibrahim, thank you very much. And Mr. Foreign Lawyer of NEMA, who is with you there, we're going to have to skip and then go back to Oladiti Akoni, who is with us via Zoom. We understand the connection has been cleared up, and he's been listening to the comments by the two earlier speakers, ACM, Assistant Corps Marshal Jonas Agu, and the President of the Chartered Institute of Logistics. Let's listen in now to Mr. Akoni Oladiti and get his views on this. I mean, the numbers we have with regard to accidents involving fuel tankers, those numbers are horrific. And you've listened to the two guests and what they have said. Let's have your own perspective on this.
Thank you very much, moderator. I have been listening to the other speaker attentively since the beginning of this program. I'm very happy that Assistant Corps Marshal is here, and he can testify to it that we have a very good relationship. I mean, petroleum tanker driver across this country, we have very good relationship with the Federal Road Safety Corps. In fact, when we have collaborating with them concerning how we can reduce the tanker crash across the country, we with the Corps Marshal, we first go on enlightenment program. We move from one part to other across the country. After that, we have synergy with them where they give us at least, we have 4 zones. We zone Nigerian to 4. Lagos zone, Kaduna zone, Warri zone, and Parako zone, where we have a driving license point where a member can obtain their driving license after they meet some requirements. So with due respect, we have issue, and the issue based on our society and our environment. As we are talking to you now, we are fighting we are fighting something in Lagos now concerning the area boys. We are talking about Otola. You know, from Tollgate down to Otola from Ojota here, whereby the area boys will clamp on tanker driver demanding money from them. And if this driver refuses to give them, they will make sure that they cut the supply pipe. Air supply pipe that supply the brake or the supply pipe for the fuel. And you know, these articulated vehicles are controlled by pumps. I mean, their steering pump is controlled by engine. Immediately the engine stopped, the steering will cease, and the truck can head to anywhere. That is part of what happened in Lagos. The one in Lokoja is because of the bad portion of the road. And that bad portion of the road in Lokoja, that accident, that spot is also a market. So you can testify to it that what we are carrying is highly inflammable products. If the other articulated vehicle, either cement or other consumable product have crashed, we can manage to retrieve the truck. But on our own, revise is the case. We have many issues concerning the road crash in Nigeria, concerning tankers. We are talking about Standard Organization of Nigeria. As we are talking now, they are still bringing in right-hand stock to Nigeria for conversion after they may bring it in, and they pass through our port. What is the duty of our Standard Organization? What is the duty of our customs? So we have a lot of things. I want to give credit to this present government. They are trying their best concerning the managing our road. Of recent, we consult some electronic media to hear what we recorded across the country. It is only NTA reviews to hear it, where we advise the government that they should do palliative measure on this our bad portion of roads. If we are talking about this from Bida down to Suleja, it comes to a stage where the Niger State government disallow tanker to pass through their road, that we should go and manage the federal road. If you see what happened during that period, as we are approaching rainy season now, we are afraid what is going to be happening again. And we don't want to shut it down. We don't want to look as we are anti-government. If you move from Benin now to Auchi, Okene, Lokoja, if you pass that two road, you will see what the tanker driver are suffering. Where they are stuck at a point for 6-7 days. So we have a lot of things. Yes, in every society, there is a bad element. Yes, we agree. But at the same time, the government should do their part. Government of the day should do their part. That is that. Another issue, the tanker owners that we are talking about, a situation whereby we are talking about maintenance, a situation whereby they will work for 6 months. Petroleum equals something privatization, they will not give their money. They will become a beggar to get their money. That is part of it. People are suffering a lot. But the reason why we are trying to endure is that we want to do our part. We are still managing it. At times, we approach the Minister for Works. We talk to us. Yes, they are doing their best. If the past government have done what they have done, this current government have done so far, I think we will not be in this position we find ourselves today. So we need government intervention in many areas. We need government intervention in many areas. So if you want to buy new truck now, brand new old truck, tractor and tank is not less than 65 million. And our economy cannot, you can't. If you dive into it, you pay for it dearly. You will regret it. Why? Because a situation whereby you can't do 4 trips in a month, you can't meet bank demand. So, sir, tanker driver, they are human beings like ordinary Nigeria. They have family. There's nobody that will go out in the morning that you are going to your work in your place of work, and you will say you will not return back to your home. You want to go and die. Nobody ready to die. But the job you have to do it, whether you like it or not. Thank God, even within Lagos Metropolis, you can see Apapa Coconut axis. It is the intervention of this government. Within that axis alone, we have tanker crash inside Lagos, where we are talking about reckless. Yes. When the Federal Road Safety Corps, when they introduce a speed limiter, we as an organization are the first organization in this country to subscribe to it, to make sure that every tanker have speed limiter. You can't speed more than 60 kilometers per hour with a tanker. You can't speed more than 60 kilometers per hour. We are trying our best, but at the same time, the government need to do their own. They need to make sure that all this bad portion, if you go to Calabar side, Udupani, Itu area, you will see what I'm talking about. So that is it, sir, for now. If need be, I will contribute more. Thank you.
Staying with you, Akami Oladiti, you've talked about the government part. Now let's talk about you as an organization and as a leader. You know, we're talking about attitudinal change for the drivers, training, raising awareness, which you have raised. We have not been able to see that. Loss of lives on these roads. Don't you think that you need to look inwards to, on how to maintain your vehicles and, and the touts who are busy cutting the pipes? What are you doing about it? Shouldn't you have security in these places where these tankers are parked before they move on out of Lagos to other parts of the country? Yes, the roads are bad, but are you maintaining the vehicles, or is it just about making money?
Good. Thank you very much. The owners are maintaining their vehicles. Even our organization, the Federal Road Safety can testify to it. We are trying our best. We are training our drivers. Training and retraining, they witness it. Every day, zonal commanders are witness our training and retraining of petroleum tankers. So the owner of the trucks, you can call them, I'm part of them. I am part of them. As I'm talking to you, I have some fleet, they are working for Total. And every six months, we take our vehicle for recertification in Total. You know, Total is an international company. So we are doing our best. In fact, some of other marketers, I mean these IOC, they are subscribed to what Total are doing, like former Ohando, like what's it called? Adova, now Adova. All of them are subscribed to the recertification of vehicles, of their trucks. And we are encouraging the other transporter to emulate what they are doing. We, as an organization, as a tanker driver, we are training and retraining. And whenever we want to do our training, we don't use that we know Mr. Know It All. We invite road safety, we invite police, we invite civil defense, we invite BIOs for training and retraining tanker driver. And whenever our leadership want to do their meeting, we invite commercial to come and talk to our people, for our people to become their educator whenever they go back to their base. So we are trying our best, but as I continue to hammer it, the government should do palliative measure concerning our road. It takes them nothing to do palliative measure. In fact, about a year ago, it was NNPC that come to our aid when the Mina, down to Splega, is not passable again, it's not motorable again. It is NNPC that come to our aid. It's not the duty of NNPC. It's the duty of Federal Ministry of Works. At times they will say the National Assembly is not, they are not release a fund. So,
Mr. Akoni Oladiti, my colleague posed a bouquet of questions, that's to say a number of questions to you, to say, yes, there are challenges that have been identified amongst various stakeholders, including government, to say the state of the roads. But specific to the tanker drivers and tanker owners, there are also a number of issues. You'll be talking about Bida Mokwa. Last year, and I haven't read any reports this year, but last year, there were reports of frequent crashes involving fuel tankers on the Onitsha-Enugu Expressway. In fact, around Onitsha itself, that's an expressway. The road there is good. I'm sure you also know what happened at Toyota bus stop in Lagos. The road has just been repaved. It's now hard pavement, which is called concrete pavement. So the road there wasn't bad in front of DHL, and suddenly these fires went on. A number of specific points have been raised, and you have also touched on one of them. I would like you to explain. Why is it that your members continue to use vehicles that are not roadworthy? Or why do your members go to the loading bay and then get overloaded? They don't have the capacity to carry the quantity that the vehicles are designed to carry. The president of the Chartered Institute of Logistics also said a while ago that, look, these tankers we are talking about are just constructed by roadside welders. And of course, you can see them when you go to some locations, you see where they are putting the plates together to form a tanker. And the safety valves are not there. Why do you keep putting these vehicles on the road? And we are having these accidents, and we're having these crashes, we're having these persons dying and persons losing their vehicles and so on and so forth.
I'm not agreeing with you. A vehicle that come down from Maiduguri or from Kano, Kaduna to Lagos, are you telling me that that kind of truck is not roadworthy? You know, motor vehicle is an engine. Anything anything within the component of the vehicle can develop any mechanical fault anytime. And it's for the driver to back and call the owner and to replace or repair. So let us, the one you are talking about, Toyota or so, I don't know the cause of the problem. But only what I know is that if a vehicle develop a mechanical fault, it's for the driver to call the owner and park the vehicle and make sure that they carry out the repair before they embark on their journey. And this bad, our bad road is causing a lot of wear and tear to the vehicle, the existing one that they are working. I'm talking about experience. So all the fault is not from the drivers at all. The owner are trying their best, and the driver that want to carry a highly inflammable
we seem to have lost him there. Okay.
his own life, because he want to work, because he want to serve somebody, and then he use his own life to I don't know. So all the fault is not from the tanker driver. Let me explain to you.
Well, Mr. Akonli Oladiti, I wasn't saying that all the fault lies with tanker drivers. There are issues with the vehicles, there are issues, of course, with the drivers, and there are also issues with the owners of the tankers. You gave an example to say, and you asked a rhetorical question, that, look, will I say that a vehicle that comes from Maiduguri to Lagos is not roadworthy? The vehicle coming from Maiduguri to Lagos is not bringing fuel products to Lagos. That vehicle is coming, the tanker is coming empty. I'm saying that tanker that comes from Maiduguri to Lagos, is it configured? In other words, is it designed to carry 33,000 liters or 40,000 liters? If it is the sole design, why is it that your men take more, and what kind of design does it have? We just said, you are saying that it is so costly to buy. If you are in business, why don't you go, and better structure your financing instead of having this endangerment of other road users? I'm sure you see the scenes from time to time, whether in Otola, Felele, in Lokoja, Anambra, or different parts of the country, where vehicles get burnt. And when these incidents happen, the motorboy and drivers always run away.
Is load or is not load. If you want to develop mechanical fault, you will develop a mechanical fault. It's not that is when the truck, a tanker is loading, that is now develop a mechanical fault. That is it.
All right. Juma?
Yes, okay. Thank you, Mr. Kamiola. We'll come back to you, actually. We're not blaming the tankers drivers. We're looking at issues arising from tanker explosions and how a lot of Nigerians have died and lost properties running into millions. Now, let's join the NEMA Coordinator, Lagos Territorial Office of National Emergency Management Agency, that is Ibrahim Farito. You are some of the first respondents when a crash like that happens, and I'm sure you've seen some horrific sights there every day. So how difficult is it, I would like to ask you that, how difficult is it for the rescue mission to be able to save lives?
It is our responsibility that we take up for national assignments. So the challenges or difficulties are part of what we dedicated ourselves for. But before going into such difficulties, just like what the president of the Tanker Drivers Association was trying to highlight, well, we've had 1 or 2, 3 occasions where, especially after Ugiri, before approaching interchange, we, along with road safety, were walking by on the road, somewhere around the road where we were having issues, and we were inspecting that place. Suddenly, we just saw a tanker coming down. We thought he saw us, but unfortunately, he lost his brake. He almost ran over us. We were able to pursue him. We chased him up to a level where he stopped. When we interrogated him, he said he lost his brake for almost 2 months and he has to drive. I said, why do you have to drive? He said once he complained that he had complained to the owner, and if he continued, we now said, if in this situation, why don't you stop? He said, what will he hit? What will he hit if the owner takes over his vehicle from him? He will never get another job. He don't know when to get another job. That is one. Physically, we've been seeing a lot of issues where tanker drivers will take over the control of the highway, block the highway, because one agency or the other will be trying to assert authority in compliance of regulations. They will block the highways for weeks, or I mean for hours, and they have to be begged. These are some of the attitude. The most observed attitude, especially within Lagos, why you see most of the crashes. One, Ogere is a sort of camp established by themselves, where we observe most of the learned drivers camp themselves in that place, ask the motor boy to go down up to Apapa to go and load. So the motor boy, if it is 2 or 3 weeks, the motor boy will be with the vehicle. After loading, is the one to drive back to Ogere. So the experience of driving that terrible, when you can drive empty vehicle, to drive back with heavy duty, with fatigue, tiredness, and other things. And you know, most of these drivers, most of the motor boys, or even the drivers, they are not under normal situation. They are always high. So by the time they are coming back, there are challenges between Apapa to Gbagada. From Gbagada down to Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, before approaching Otedola, between toll gates, Lagos head toll gate to Otedola, there are challenges. Between Otedola to Kara Bridge, there is a particular problem in that place. NEMA and the zonal commanding officer of the Federal Road Safety Corps, we carried out some assessment which we observe, and we hope to jointly present what we observe, because we had such situation in Imo State, and when the situation was corrected, the crisis, the problem in that area, that is called Inyamba Bridge. Just Inyamba Bridge had the same structure like Otedola Bridge. You know, from Lagos end of toll gate, when you are exiting Lagos, you will see a slope coming down, a steep slope coming down, and at the same time, you will see a sort of slight turning, and you ascend with a lot of vehicles in front of you at the back. So while you are trying to control the speed while descending, at the same time, the vehicles, you know, there is Omole Magodo estate by the Otedola Bridge. So the trailer we have to struggle while trying to descend. At the same time, smaller vehicles and other vehicles will be trying to turn either towards K2, yes, Ikoshi, and to Magodo estate. So these are some of the challenges that we have observed, and the structure of the road is what we observe to be the major problem at Otedola. So for Kara, when we are going to Kara, as you are sent into Beggar bus stop, most of the driver, because of the little boy, will just be moving straight, but ascending the bridge, there's a sort of object that will try to throw the vehicle off hand. So only one case, out of all the cases we've observed in the last 2 years, only one case we saw that a driver and his motorboy were caught snapping and died on that bridge. So most times, overspeeding and lack of proper road sign could have caused that of Kara Bridge instantly. And you will see between 200 meters when you enter into the Kara Bridge, most of the incident happens after 200 meters. So particularly, we are looking at this area. Then in responding, the problem of responding to disaster generally in Lagos is the problem of elites. When you are blaring your siren, you are clearing, most of our responders will have to run for 2 to 3 kilometers each time we are moving out to clear the road. The elite don't care whether you are blaring your siren or there is an emergency. So that is the major challenge we are having. The second challenge we are now being confronted with in recent time, initially we used to ask Beggar to roll out their equipment, like crane, forklift to lift one thing or the other. But recently, maybe one incident or the other happened. They now decided not to roll out any of the equipment. You know, anywhere in the world, there is no emergency agency that will have enough equipment. So, Lagos State governments, by Lasema, they have crane, and the crane, when we have multiple incidents in one place, so for them to release one crane is another thing. So the issue of getting enough material at our disposal is another thing. And on a daily basis, not less than 135 vehicles move in and move out of Lagos on each side of the way. So that's about 275 vehicles moving simultaneously. So for us, an incident that happens for 10 minutes, it will take 2-3 hours to clear the backlog of traffic in that area. About loading or the safety of the standard of the vehicle, integrity of the vehicle. When you get to a tank farm, except few tank farms have facilities, safety facilities on their own. Then most of the tankers that are loading, when you have about 30 tankers to load in a day or in a particular time, then you have only 2 heads that are of standard, which the road safety, the stationed road safety officer in the tank farm or at a proper hand will observe. The same head will go, pick fuel, take it somewhere. Most of the heads are the ones being used. So the real, the bad heads will not come out. So it's when they get to their point, they will change and go downward. The climate change also is part of it. Most of the road construction, when you see the quantum of rainfall, the level of rainfall, within a year, you will see the same spot that was repaired, the climate change, the level of the rain, and the pressure, the weight of the load on that road will easily give way because of the quantum of the rainfall. The discharge of water on the asphalt. Even once the asphalt accumulates much water, it will definitely get weakened. So these are some of the issues, the sharp practices by the drivers themselves, because the driver of a tanker that is going to load must have his health proper. Though the road safety had proposed, they've implemented a sort of 2-brake system for a tanker, that when there is an emergency, the tanker itself will stop on its own. Then on the other side, it can be controlled manually by the driver. So there are 2 systems of tank brake control in this. But in instances where even the road structure is faulty, like that of Otola, that is the major problem of Otola. The road structure has to review. If you look at the other side of the road, it's normal. So there is no problem on that. We've never recorded any problem on that side of the inward Lagos Otola side. So when the driver moves, because of fatigue, and there are a lot of things that a driver can do. Because one of the driver that we observe, just less than maybe 18 years old, we saw him driving on that route. How can we allow such to happen? Like the president of the Drivers Association, why do we have this? We remember we remember back when they were used to parking by the roadside. The road safety took action. They took them out of the roadside. Then the driver parking, having their camp in some areas outside the town. Even when they were agitating for parking space around Apapa, also it will not stop the activities of crashes if the attitudinal change and the training that we are talking about of the drivers is not adequate. It's not the one. Most of them cannot operate fire extinguishers. They cannot operate fire extinguishers. After the Toyota incident, the NOSTRA, that's the National Oil Spill Detection Agency, and the DPR with road safety and the Lagos State Minister of Transport. We are thinking of convoking a sort of workshop or training, a workshop where all the stakeholders in this aspect of industry will be convoked, and all of us will meet to find out how we are going to move ahead, especially within Lagos, Ogun State axis. Because once the problem is solved in Ogun, in this axis, the other part of the country will be easier to resolve.
Mr. Ibrahim, thank you. You've raised some pertinent questions, and painted a scenario that is not...
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have all our 4 guests, and we are discussing the incessant crashes involving fuel tankers and the fatalities and destruction of private and public property resulting therefrom. Let's bring in one more time the Assistant Corps Marshal Jonas Agu. ACM, well, of course, you've listened to the responses on the points raised. At some point, Mr. Kone Oladiti was calling you in evidence to suggest that you are aware of their training, you also participate in their training, but it should appear from what the NEMA official has also indicated that the training is poor, or in fact the level of competence of a number of drivers and the sharp practices, just the sheer lawlessness or impunity on the part of the owners and tanker drivers. These are some of the issues that we are dealing with, other than infrastructure. What are your responses to this bouquet of issues?
Well, my first response is, I think what he was referring to has to do with our level of engagement with the unions and the other stakeholders. Stakeholder engagement, awareness, training are 3 levels of intervention that we have introduced. But have we gotten all the support we can get from the various stakeholders when it comes to training? No. So when the NEMA man talked about training not being adequate, he was very correct. Now, awareness is also an issue, but having spoken about that, it will come to the nitty-gritty of all the issues that have been raised. We talked about the issue of non-compliance with axle load. Of course, you need the way bridges to use as a point to check and enforce compliance with that. And that has always been the point we have made as an agency. That's been the point that each time we call a stakeholders meeting, that emphasis has been made. Point number 2, now we are dealing with axle load and standard of the vehicles. Now, when we had the toll plazas, they provided a pin down point for us where vehicles, if you don't meet certain standards, you don't go beyond those points. So the last couple of years, we've been saying to the government, we need the toll plazas returned back, we need the way bridges restored back, so that our enforcement efforts will not be in hollow. I don't want to break down number of personnel, knock down or kill in attempt to want to enforce regulations. Those are 2 points I want to make. Third one, we talked about the safe to load. When we brought the safe to load, the idea was what? To ensure compliance with vehicle standard, compliance with driver's competence. You heard my brother from NEMA say to you that, look, some level of abuses. These are the human thing. When I said at my opening, I said, even with the state of vehicles, the state of the road, if the human element is handled, we will not record the level of crashes and deaths. It's because of these inherent abuses, because we place profits, personal interest far above the safety of Nigerians. He gave the instance of a driver who says, what do you expect me to do? If the brake has failed, I would operate it. And then the owner who knows the brake is faulty still says, operate with that vehicle. When we came up and said, look, the issue of speed is an issue, we introduced a speed limiting device and said, look, with the speed limiting device, that becomes the mechanical instrument that would deter the human element so that the driver cannot go beyond the approved speed limit for that tanker. And then I like when my colleague did re-echo my point about fatigue-induced crashes. We have been on the truck transit park and transit scheme and saying you need a distant place for these people to rest, maintain their vehicles, service their vehicles, and with the use of technology, the man only moves when he needs to move. Not a scenario where you are creating traffic congestion, you are causing problem because the man who is driving isn't competent, isn't resting. These are some of the issues we have to deal with. Let me say this with a bias. I know you had issues when he mentioned the state of their vehicles and the absence of funds. Now, you heard when he said they need palliative from government to assist in fleet renewal. Now, if you go to the banking sector, it is not a business they take interest in. So you have a scenario where most of the people, even though it's not an excuse, but it's a point that cannot be isolated to say it's important we consider. Because like you said in your opening, the people dying are our brothers and our sisters, and we need to put a stop to it. Now, we talked about the issue of the absence of the API, standard manholes, and safety valves. And we've recommended and said we need to have a nationwide compliance to monitor the fabrication. If there's no monitoring, like he said, if you just have anybody anywhere fabricating and there's no monitoring to ensure that compliance is followed, you will have these crashes happening again and again. These are some of the issues I believe we should address. But I feel that even with what we have on ground as of today, if the various stakeholders from the tank farm, look at what he said, when we deploy men to tank farms on a safe to load, and we said our men will be there to ensure that that vehicle meets a safety standard. And then it's more like you writing WAEC. You present a graduate to stand in that you are the one. He writes the exams, but the picture is yours. And then you say, I passed the exams. So you call that fraud. Because if you're bringing a different tanker head so that you can pass through the test, and when you move out, where you think that nobody will check you on the road, you can now fit another head to that truck, then it means that whatever happens thereafter, you purposely took a part in causing that. So I believe that it will tweak some of these safety issues that we have raised on this platform, that we should be able to, in this 2021, bring down, because the meetings we have with the various stakeholders, every issue has been itemized. Every issue, whether it has to driver training, it has to vehicle maintenance, it has to do with compliance with the rules, everything has been itemized. The issue now is, can we hit the ground and comply with this minimum safety standards? Minimum. If we do that, there will be crashes, but that would not occur.
ACM, Jonas Ago, and my colleague Juma, the last set of numbers that we are dealing with related to January to June 2020. Yeah. We don't know what the numbers will be for July to December. So this is a new year. We are in January. Yeah. The idea could then be, fine, if we had so many crashes involving fuel tankers last year, this year we want to half it, so reduce the number by half, or the incidents by half going forward. This is a very elaborate conversation we're having this morning.
We had one on the 8th of January this year, but there was no loss of lives. It has already begun.
You had no loss of lives, but damage to public property. Damage to property. The Toyota bridge leading to the international airport has been closed because they are still assessing the integrity of that bridge on account of the fire. That's going to cost public funds. About 200 meters of that hard pavement already reconstructed by Dangote has also been damaged. I'm just wondering, Alhaji Jibril Ibrahim, President, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. I'm re-echoing this with the greatest respect to all those who are involved in the haulage of fuel products. You had said you were going to refrain, excuse me, from saying quacks leading quacks. But the more we discuss this issue and the evidence comes up to the surface, we just realize that, look, these are persons who are conveying volatile materials who do not appear to have an appreciation of what they are conveying and the hazards they pose to themselves, they pose to the rest of the public and to the society. Is it not time that we begin to have an upgrade of those who are in this business in the first instance and those who get involved? Why would you give a tanker, a fuel tanker, to an underage person or to a motorboy? A motorboy is not been certified. To say, okay, I'm at Ogere, take it to Apapa, load it, and then bring it back. And the person is just recklessly careless as to the consequences.
Definitely, Kingsley. Let me appreciate the effort that is being put in place, or all the activities that the stakeholders have engaged themselves in trying to see that some of these problems are mitigated. But let me be honest with you. We have been reeling out statistics. We have been mentioning the effort each and every stakeholder has been making, and at the end of the day, we end up passing buck. Now, if we're faced with these problems of compliance, what are we doing to see that there is sufficient compliance to the standards and traffic safety rules? What are the enforcement agencies doing? It appears we're just waiting for people to comply. And if they don't, then what happens? We continue to die, we continue to lose property. The losses to the economy are grave, and there must be a definite action in order to address these issues with due respect, but we should not be only defending our own positions. Of course, the challenges that all the stakeholders are facing are apparent. We all know them. Everybody knows it. But then what are we doing to address them? I think from this point, government must step in. As I mentioned earlier, we declare a state of emergency in this issue, and government must step in, bring all stakeholders together, and take concrete decisions on what should be done. If we sit down from now till tomorrow, we'll be reeling out the problems, and we'll also be reeling out the mitigants. But just reeling them out is not helping us. And at the end of the day, I would want to call on the Road Safety Corps, because they did a fantastic job in 2019 up to 2020 in coming up with the road safety strategy. They brought stakeholders together, and we all came and packaged it. It's a medium-term strategy document, and we have had it before. But then, who is enforcing it? Who is making sure that the standards are followed? Because in that document, we have every requirement for training, retraining, capacity building, standards of these. Even organizations that are supposed to handle some of these things are identified in that strategy document. But please, let us stop passing the buck. Let us start by addressing the issues decisively. And it appears even the regulatory agencies and the enforcement agencies, nobody is tracking them. What are the targets being set for these organizations? Do we just sit down and mention the little effort that we're putting in? And of course, agreed, we're putting in so much effort. But why the deaths? Why the crashes? Why the losses to the economy? And I would want to agree with you, Kingsley, the issue of attitude has to be addressed first and foremost. Government, we have mentioned mitigants already, but government needs to redouble effort, because the bad road network has been mentioned severally. Even though they are doing some good work in that area, I think they need to step up effort. We need to also try and look at other modes of transportation, moving away from this overdependence on the road transport for the carriage, haulage of these petroleum products. The rail sector, I know federal government is making some effort, but then we need to do more, and in a hurry, because this catastrophic situation requires urgent measures. So the rail sector has to, as it's being revamped, we have to look at quickly how we can use the rail sector to address some of these haulage issues. The pipelines, of course, can be revamped, and then we can use the pipeline mode in order to transport these products at least to some other parts of the country, so that it is the distance being covered by these trucks is shortened. And honestly speaking, it is either will go into.
Mr. Jibrin, we are running out of time. We have some tweets that came in. We thank you so much for the points that you've raised. But we have some tweets, and Nigerians want to contribute to the conversation. I'll begin with Festus Akimboyewa. He said the sad that fuel tanker explosions are becoming common in our country. Seeing people burning to death when petroleum tankers overturns and explodes is extremely painful. What kind of poverty will make people gather around an overturned petrol tanker to scoop fuel only to die in a fireball?
Now, this is coming from Mike Anyakwo. He says that, yes, we appreciate the fact that it's hard to buy brand new tankers. However, the ones on our roads should be properly serviced before usage. Many lives and property have been lost to these infernos. Many drivers are recalcitrant and never obey simple rules. Some drink excessively and are under the influence of hard drugs too. Offenders should not be treated with kid gloves, but the laws of the land should take their full course.
As Suleiman Babagana tweets, lack of safety awareness and control measures for drivers and the public in operating a fuel-laden container in a densely populated area, coupled with high temperature, is one of the causes which can be mitigated by building of petrol depot in other places. That means discongesting Lagos.
All right, let's take Akeju Olagbaju. It says the solution is a mixed mode of transportation, pipeline, rail, and others to deliver multiple tank fills. The road trucks or the trucks will now lift the products over a short distance, say not more than 100 kilometers to delivery pumps. Now, this will remove fatigue from drivers and also save our road networks.
And Orobenga 2020 tweet, I'm very happy for this important topic you're discussing this morning. This year, Nigeria must not record any tanker explosion. It has already recorded one. Government must seriously do something about it. It saddens my heart to see people being burnt to death as if they are animals. There are many things we can do to stop this tanker explosion.
This is coming from Yunus Idris. In part, it says, Standards Organization should look into it. The construction of tankers does not appear to follow international standards. Safety must be first.
And Steve Bond tweets, many of their drivers are not licensed, but the rail should start accommodating loads of premium motor spirits.
Now, Leo Fadaka, the truth is that a number of the tankers on our roads are rickety and therefore not roadworthy. This is coming from old age and lack of proper maintenance, especially the privately owned ones. Standards must be upgraded to avoid frequent tanker explosions.
Well, I think that's about the much we can take from the tweets that came in this morning. Thank you so much for sending your tweets on time. Now, back in the studio, Jonas, we're running out of time. Can we say it is, can we just say that tanker explosion is a threat to national security and lives and property, briefly, before we go?
Yes, it's a threat to lives and national security, like we've broken down. We're dealing with human beings, dealing with infrastructure, and at a time when we need the available resources to improve Nigeria, we cannot afford to take actions that would further complicate what is going on in the country. So I believe that my take to all of my other colleagues was to remember that these crashes are caused because of the error of blunder of someone. In 2021, we must avoid allowing these errors, because the error of allowing a substandard vehicle, the error of allowing a motorboy to drive, the error of allowing a driver who is fatigued to drive, the error of not complying with any of the self-standard would result in death. And we must, in this year, guard against that.
All right. ACM Jonas Agu, thanks a lot. Mr. Akone Oladiti, well, the program is coming to a close now, but it's a topic that we'll have to return to at some point pretty soon, so that we can begin, because you also talked about security issues involving the tanker drivers themselves. You were talking about area boys and so on and so forth. So we will give you the opportunity at some other time to respond to the number of issues that have been raised. So we're not shutting you up. We will have the opportunity of your association responding. Plus, of course, the frequent threats to go on strike by your members when the law enforcement agents insist on enforcing the rules. So we'd like to appreciate you for being with us this morning. Salmon Akoni Oladiti, National Chairman, Petroleum Tanker Drivers Association of Nigeria. You joined us from Oyo State via Zoom. Thank you for being with us this morning. From Lagos, we're joined by two guests, Ibrahim Farinloye, who is Acting Coordinator of the Lagos Territorial Office of NEMA. Thanks a lot for being around. And President, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, Alhaji Jibril Ibrahim. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. Here in the Abuja studios, Assistant Corps Marshal Jonas Agu, Zonal Commanding Officer, FRSC Zone 7, Abuja. Delight having you around.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that's it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks for tuning in. The program returns tomorrow. Same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Jumoye.